It's not in the cards for you. I'm pretty good at insults, and I got the internet and a lot of free time.
Kenny might have got the quantity, but we got the quality. Kenny, that's how you do it. Until next time.
So yeah, after a year and a half being homeless, I'm no longer homeless. What is this? It's a bingo thing I just found. One I-21. Is there any I-21s? I-21? I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because I don't really see the need to do that. At least not yet. But where I'm living at, I can get a part-time job, which will double my income, and I might do that. I got a tip from a guy who works at Safeway for a courtesy clerk, so I might look into that after a while. There's still some stuff that I have to clear first, but all the technical details are worked out, and I have a place to live now, so I'm trying to keep it kosher, you know what I mean, copacetic P's and Q's. That doesn't mean that I'm not open for the videos mitigating between the two parties. You know, you saw my video where I was berating two cats kind of nicely. I was polite, like, you kitties, you bad kitties. I usually thought that was funny because she wrote me back and said it was perfect. So I like doing videos like that. They're kind of kid-friendly. But I'll mitigate between any kind of like two parties, whether you want me to do it rated G or rated R. Things I won't do is berate myself or anything like bigoted, like racist or homophobic or anything like that. I won't do videos like that. That's childish. Somebody wrote me and he got all in a huff because I wouldn't do a video telling the audience that I was a liar. And I said, fine, I'll do it if you give me $150 and I'll preface it by saying you paid me $150 to do this. And he's just grouching about this, and I don't care. He wants me to decry all my research. He wants me to decry myself as a board game designer. He wants me to decry myself as a person. The most rated G thing I could say about that is this. I'm not going to do that. Go suck your mother's tits. But you know how good I am at insult videos, motherfuckers. The more I think about it, the more I start to realize that my haters tend to give me this off-putting political vibe, because our differences really are political. If you tell some liberal that you have bipolar, your liberal friend is going to be like, oh, I have a friend of a friend that had that, or I have that, or my mom has that, or at least you get a, oh, I'm so sorry, and they'd want to hug you. Because that's how liberals are. Liberals are the nice people. You understand, I've lived in Western Washington for the first 36 years of my life, and I still live in Washington State now, where most people are liberal and left-wing, and they care about the feelings of others. They're sensitive to the needs of others. So when I meet somebody that calls themselves a liberal or non-political, and they don't have any kind of sensitivity, what that feels like and smacks of is a conservative in the closet. Someone that straight up calls you retarded, even though you didn't do anything, say something that might have made sense, and then you might say, hey, how you doing, girl? But then they start like continuing on the perseveration path of calling you an idiot or something like that. Like it's going to get your attention or something in a positive way. It's not really a matter of stupid versus non-stupid. It's a matter of liberals are more motivated by hope and conservatives are more motivated by fear. So when you get like these dude bros, if you call them like a homophobic slur, like among their weird dude bro friends, they're going to get upset about it. A liberal is just going to be like, well, that's you. You know, you're projecting, or, you know, I really don't care what you think, or you can believe whatever the hell you want. It doesn't bother me. There's worse things to be called by better people. But a conservative is going to get really pissed off at that. So I've met people that have supported Bernie Sanders that have been like, oh, how dare you call me a Trump or something like that. I'm going to fight you over this. or they get all uprighteous about like being called a punk ass or something real benign. And you just look at these cats like, you're a liberal? You consider yourself a left-winger? That's how a conservative would react. Like, you know, it's that difference that makes it seem like the haters Walter Fate and Clickatat are just opposite political. You look at like the people that comment on their posts, it's like fundy this, fundy that. They're trolls, you know. They're trolls to our political position on the left. They would probably consider me a troll based on their political position. So, like, if I meet somebody in public like Chloe or Autumn or something, and it all boils down to they're only going to date dudes that are exactly the same as every other dude bro out there, and they don't find that funny, well, to me that just sounds like, oh, whoa, welcome new Republican. You know what I mean? Like, you may as well just out yourself as a Republican at that point. And I really mean to say you, not me. You know, I'm clearly a Democrat. I'm clearly left-wing. I'm clearly got socialist leanings. I've clearly got a lot of in common with like the newer young adult generation. And I've clearly expressed my views against hatred towards women, the blacks, gays, greed, misogyny, womanizing, hypocritical behavior from Christians, hypocritical behavior from atheists, hypocritical behavior in general. So that's all like that whiny liberal crap that conservatives hate. So when you hate me, what you're really just telling me is that you're a conservative. Because that's how it feels, is you're the opposite political. Our brains are geared differently. They're wired differently. We're retarded in our own different ways, sort of thing. But who else is going to say we're different in our own different special ways other than a liberal? A conservative? I don't think so. So if you hate me, it is what it is, you know? Another liberal saying, it is what it is. That's even the motto of Washington State is Al-Kai, which is what will be, will be. So if you're a hater, I question your story logic, because to me it just seems like you're a Republican, based on the things that I've said, or a conservative. I don't have soundtrack to my videos a lot because I don't know how to fuck around with that on my phone. So I'm kind of just letting the TV go. I'm not touching it because it's not mine. But he seems to have left for a while. I have to tell the staff to turn the TV off so I can sleep. I'm not one of these people that can have the TV on and fall asleep to it and wake up the next morning refreshed. You know what I mean? God. Just imagine that in your ear as you're trying to sleep. I don't get that. I came up with a few games while I was at the hospital. I said that I left a few, but I had to go back. And while I was there, I developed on paper some games. I'm going to tell you about one. It's called Roll Out the Dough. And feel free to copy this. And it's not trademarked or anything like that. It's just some game that I came up with using nothing but 12 dice and 4 different colors of discs that I have. I built this gaming kit. It's like $40 to have gotten it this thick. But, you know, there's all sorts of crap in here. My dad would call crap in a bag. Like a couple of D20s. Some directional dice that I've used for like wind currents and prototyping some stuff. I've actually been prototyping like about 10 games. There's this Noah's Ark game that I'm potentially going to build for the Mosaic Center. There's all these like dice and shit in my hands. But what I did is I developed a game called Roll Out the Dough. And it's real simple. You roll 12 dice and you take your 6 favorite and build a pizza. You have 12 different toppings. You can combine them into 1 or 2 combinations. A combination of 1 isn't really a combination, but you can take 2 dice and then create the 7th through 10th I'm sorry, 7th through 12th combo for your pizza. I don't remember what was on the list. It could be just 12 different random toppings, and pepperoncinis can be your 12 or your 1 or your 5. It doesn't really matter, but you take 2 of the dice and combine them, but you can only take 6 of the 12. But the meat are these guys. Everything else is vegetable. So everybody starts out with 2 of these per their color, and you can play this 2 to 4, and you try to build 5 pizzas, if that makes sense. And it's a game that I came up with called Roll Out the Dough, and it's just using dice. Like, I got these kind of dice, but I also have the smaller ones that I got. You can get these at Uncle's Games for like 15 cents. And I have like 6, I think I have 15 of these, 15 or 16 of these that I picked up. One of them I think I got lost because they're so tiny. I'm going to go buy like a whole handful more of them anyway to kind of fill up this bag. I got a couple packs of playing cards. Just various things. These are full bicycle decks. They're great for prototyping. These are some that I liked, that I tore out from my notebook that I ended up liking, of just game ideas. And that's really all else. Like just get a bunch of crap, throw it together. I'm gonna get the big white box, which is about $30, and like maybe some blank tiles and stuff, and blank chits from the Game Crafter to build my own like mega gaming prototyping kit, because I think that would help things along. It's amazing how this has helped some of my ideas along, having just a bunch of crap that you might find in a game, and then like seeing in your head, what can I do that might use 30 dice, or like 2 dice or whatever, and a couple of chips. What could I do? The smallest amount of thing. Like with the 20-sided die, what could you do? You do a lot with a 20-sided die. You can do a lot with just a game with 1 dice, called a die. 6 different options of things that you can do, like you gotta quack like a duck or something like that. Anything you really want to do with 1 dice, which is called a die. I always fuck that up. 1 dice. Die and dice isn't really. It's kind of quasi-intellectual to know something like that, so I don't really bother with that 1 dice. It doesn't make sense linguistically, I guess you could say. But if you really want to be a board game designer, kids, get like some pens too and keep them around. Get anything. Get these chips. I got blue ones, I got green ones, I got red ones. There's all sorts of wacky things you could just put together with just various crap in a bag. I'm going to call this video Crap in a Bag.
I really need a pit bad. If we can discover this one, that really takes a big load off of me.
No, I can't do anything about the television because it's not my television. It's my roommate. But what I'm trying to do is learn how to incorporate luck into a board game where I don't really think you need luck at all in a board game. It's called random number generation, RNG, or dice rolling, or card draws. And I'm not sure if that's always necessary to do. In the scenario that I've drawn up, you're going to be moving on the field as you wish in order to collect things as you wish. Step 2, I just drew that first because that's how the cookie crumbled, and I started working on step 2 at this point, and I just put step 2 first. And you're going to be fitting like shapes, you could say, like Tetris type shapes into those. As you harvest from step 1, you get the things for step 2, which is a completely different board. You see that a lot in modern board gaming. But there's this step 3, and you're dealt a certain amount of cards, and you have to hand manage it, where you have to build a high fat content against their low caloric content. which would be a random thing. You're going to get random tiles like you do in Carcassonne in step 4. I know you're going to say Castles of Dunshire, but it's really not like that. It's more a table eater thing. It's not like your living room eater thing, if you know the Parks and Rec reference to Castles of Dunshire. So then you'll get tiles, and you can organize those how you like. And I'm starting to fall in love with the idea of a hand management thing, where you're dealt a certain amount of things, but you get to determine how you lay them down. Because I really don't like the idea of gambling in a game, but the idea of luck and skill together makes a great board game. Even Scrabble has a luck element to it, and Scrabble is one of the best games of all time. Monopoly is kind of a shitty game. It's one of those games that just gets tedious after a while, like Risk. You can play and play and play, and by the time you reach like the halfway point, you want it to end. Admit it, whenever you're playing Monopoly or Risk, you're always getting to the point where you want it to end, and you really don't want it to end with Scrabble. You're kind of thinking, like, if the board was bigger, I would still want to play more. So, like, that's the thing, you gotta cut it off right where it's starting to become at its most fun point. Step 6 is going to be where you are going to collect these letter tiles or letter blocks, and you're going to be putting them on the board. You're going to be able to play up to 10 of them, but you could take anybody's letters that they played and make a 6-letter word. That's part of it. Set collections, where you're also getting the basic sugars necessary to create your plant. This is all based in plants, the sentient plant life. There's a whole story behind it. They're called the Nikila. Just throwing that out there. And 8 is you're harvesting the things you need from this board in order to build the castles, or whatever it's going to be. It probably won't be castles. It'll be something else. And that's to get to the point where you can play step 9, having the pieces, they're parties, which develop into scenes. So just as it's becoming fun at the end, the game ends. It's not based on points. It's based on getting to the point to where you can crush them at the attack mode. It's not the goal that I have in mind is to not have this based on points. It's just getting to that point first to where you build up your supply of attackers before they do. And that's one of the boards that I'm developing of the 3. And then there's a couple of tile things, tile laying parts. Yeah, it's big and epic and might seem clunky at first, but I'm working with that. This is just a prototype. I want it to be big, and I want it to take like 30 hours to play. You're there like, Jiminy Christmas, 30 hours to play. Well, there's games like that take months. So I'm kind of prototyping ideas of different colors of terrain and how to do that. I'm kind of thinking the pieces will be D4s. So you'll as it gets to a certain point, you'll get to put it at 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4-sided die. So your fights will be won by how many people are on your board at that point, maybe. I'm just kind of brainstorming here of this game that I'm tentatively calling a lot of different things. As you can see, I've come up with a lot of different things. I kind of like Reign of Pollen or Reign of Space Pollen, a space opera, because it really does detail a species' life. And that's really what I'm going for, is to kind of detail sort of the mundane. Like in a lot of board games, the thing that you do the most of is farming, or you're colonizing planets. I kind of want to build a space empire based on things that aren't human or even resemble human. I'm a big fan of Barlow's book, Expedition to Darwin 4. Check that out. It's an art book, and it shows an alien species without eyes, and they're massive, the size of buildings, some of them the size of neighborhoods, just crawling all over this planet. and they pick up things through, like the snake does, through piths in their face. And I like that whole idea of a face that's not reminiscent of anything. Maybe kaiju would be like the big reference point. The Japanese monsters that came to Earth in the comic of the kaiju, where they're harder than steel and just smashing through things if they ever came to Earth. So I'm just brainstorming different ideas. Yeah, that 864 space might actually go down to 15 by 15, but when you're cooking, it's easier to add stuff than to subtract stuff. It seems like within board gaming, it's easier to subtract stuff. So you start at the epic scale and you move down. So it's easier to subtract from that than to add to that. So I start big and I usually work myself down. I still want the 10 steps. But as I'm going through honing it, I'm kind of realizing I can do this with less and less parts and still convey the same idea and still have an epically long game, which is my point of designing what might end up becoming called Space Sugar World, or Fiber, or Flunga, or Verdant, or Reign of Pollen, a space opera, or Space Whisper, or Inasa. Just whatever I come up with, whatever I decide to settle on. It's going to be quasi-secretive when I release it. It's going to cost like $500 to make, minus the art cost. Unless I found a really good artist that's in high school or college, guy or girl, it doesn't really matter to me, as long as you're willing to work for a percentage of the profits. There's a lot of good artists out there in high schools and colleges that don't really know what to do, and they can get famous based on something like this. And that's really what I hope for. I've just filled up lots of the book. I really like this idea of the spaces are different shapes that I came up with. Just a lot of storyboarding, Who knows what it's going to be? I don't. That's why I'm storyboarding. Yeah, I've really been thinking about this. How there's all this talk now about how the billionaires are the evil people. And they're right. You know what I mean? Like, think of the Great Depression era, how they were using, like, Ritz crackers to substitute apple pie filling, or making, like, puddings out of prunes or whatever. They're doing, like, all these scrimp and save things because there wasn't any kind of surplus of anything. But then you see the millionaires and the billionaires that actually existed, like the Rockefellers, and even the President of the United States, who had, you know, a lot of money. The FDR, you know, you're the President of the United States, you're treated like a king anyway. But he, during like the time period where, you know, things weren't going well because of World War I and the Spanish flu, kind of knocked our economy into hell for a good 20 years before World War II efforts started, and Hitler started amassing weapons, so we started amassing weapons, and the economy boomed. It all just seems like just so planned, doesn't it? Like a big conspiracy. And you might laugh at that as a conspiracy, but, you know, think of things like the legalization of marijuana or other things that were conspiracies. Like, they made hemp illegal and marijuana illegal because of the paper industries and the oil industries and the wood and timber industries. And they had the big money to fight the legalization of hemp, or not the legalization, but to criminalize hemp and marijuana. And how there's all those things that were proven true. It's not really a conspiracy if it seems so contrived. People like to say, well, you know, they worked hard for their money. That's why they're millionaires and billionaires. Well, think of the people that are really working hard, like the real pushers and movers of the brooms and the machines, pushing things around. And then you think, you know, communism doesn't sound like such a bad idea after all. Because during eras where, you know, there's a recession or a depression, who really benefits from that? The rich. Not the poor, not the middle class, but the rich. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class get poorer usually too. So you look at things like these eras of time where there's a dip in the economy, like the Great Depression or the Great Recession of the 1990s, and you start thinking about this stuff, how there's like all these people that are fat cats and crumb bums that are living quite well when they could have just distributed the wealth. You're like, oh, that's socialism. Well, okay. And your point is, I don't really understand the love of capitalism when the capitalist system creates a glut at one end of the economy and a depression or recession at the other end of the economy. Why not just force them to redistribute the wealth? Oh, then the businesses will go out of business. Yeah, and everybody would have a surplus. Everybody would have what they need. That's the point of communism, is you have everything that you need. It would be the equivalent of everybody having a job that wanted one and everybody getting paid $100,000 to do that job. Most people wouldn't balk at that. Like doctors wouldn't be doctors because they're getting paid less. Well, they would. They would still be doctors because they're empathic and sympathetic towards the needs of others. Imagine a world without waiters or doctors and the whole economy just falls to shit. Imagine a world without janitors. Imagine a world without construction workers or fast food workers. It's just as horrible as imagining a world without lawyers or doctors or middle management. And it's scary when you think about it, how people were still living rich and fat during the Great Depression. But there are all these people that weren't, that were doing all the real work. Who was working hard during the Great Depression? The poor, the middle class. Who was working less? Well, probably the people in their big fat cat offices in the Empire State Building. They were just pushing pencils around or answering telephones. They worked hard for their money, or did they rob it from you? Think about that. The capitalist system sucks.
You're scaring the hell out of me, man. Everything that I do good, I try to do good.